This meeting of the Governance and Audit Committee on Thursday, the 25th of September. Good to see people in the chamber as well as online. So just to remind people that this meeting is going to be recorded. If you want to speak, then raise your hand. If you're online, if you've got a mobile phone, turn it off or put it onto silent. Obviously, we will go on to the agenda. Item 1 is the apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies for absence, Taylor?
Don Reid and Councillor Perkins.
Anyone else? No. Okay. Councillor Jordan, you said may be late. Yep. Okay. Item 2 then, declaration of interest. Are there any declaration of interest? No. Okay. Item 3, minutes of the last meeting, pages 3 to 8, correctness only. Someone prepared to move, please? Thank you. Have a seconder? Thank you. Anyone against? Nope. Thank you very much. Item 3A, which is the recommendations table, pages 9 to 14. These are the outstanding recommendations. Any questions on them? Norma.
Thanks, Rhys. Thanks. Thank you, Chair. I've got a number of questions, really, if I can go through them. First of all, the meeting of the 30th of May 24, the issue about a closed briefing session on loans to companies. You will recall I raised this issue, I think, a couple of years ago now, because I was actually concerned about it, and I understand there might be commercial sensitivity around it. I was noted that it was going to be discussed with the leader 2 days ago. It feels that this may be of concern to the Governance and Audit Committee, and I was concerned that there may be risks around it that we should be aware of. So that's the one. Shall I move on and give them all?
If I could deal with that.
Sure.
It was obviously raised at Council, I understand, on Tuesday night. There were questions given and there were response given from the, I understand, the Leader of the Council back. Just to confirm also, I've also had an email from the Leader of the Opposition, Councillor Matthew Evans, in regards to this issue. I've responded to Matthew and had a further response back saying, thank you very much for your response. He's also written to the Head of Law and Standards and is awaiting a response, as I am now, because obviously I will need to see the response which the Head of Law and Standards set out. However, I have been given a confidential informal briefing on these issues, and I can assure the committee that to date I consider that all matters have been dealt with in accordance with the Council policy and procedures, and they've been reported to the appropriate bodies as and when appropriate. They are commercially sensitive items, extremely commercially sensitive items, and whilst obviously the recommendation said that a report would come at a due course, given consideration in due course, what I've done now is I've asked whether Rhys could actually organise, if he would be able to facilitate a meeting with the leaders of the opposition groups and obviously the Leader Council to, in a confidential manner, to discuss these matters, because I think a lot of what's happening is people are coming up with 2 and 2 makes 5, and I think a lot of that, if that briefing was done confidentially, then I would hope a lot of this angst would go away, because certainly in one of the projects the due date hasn't arisen yet, by which the loan has to be repaid or the money has to be repaid, and in regards, you can have my assurance that if at any stage I do not have that assurance, I will ask the internal audit team to investigate these matters fully. So you've got that on the public record now. It will be available for people to view, but at the moment I can assure you everything's been done, due diligence has been undertaken, so we just need to wait because of that commercial sensitivity around some of these projects.
Thank you, Chair, and it's good to hear that you've been briefed on it, so at least you as Chair of the Committee know what is going on. So I'm quite content with that response. The meeting of the 31st of July 25, agenda item 7, why is it taking 4 months to write the letter to Cardiff Capital Region? I don't think it's been done yet, from what I can see.
Norma, there's some confusion here in regards to this. It's expected that I would write the letter myself on behalf of the council, where normally the officers write the letter on my behalf. What I will do, and what I've discussed, I've written 2 letters to Cardiff Capital, to the Auditor General in regards to this matter. I've had the same response in regards to the 2 other committees I chair, which is Bridgend and the Vale. And what I suggest is, even if I wrote the letter, I'd get the same response back. I will ask whether one of the other councils are happy to share that letter with me. I can see no reason why they won't, because in regards to the Vale Little Morgan, we are actually going to discuss in open forum the letter received from the Auditor General, and I've also had a letter from the 151 officer of Cardiff Joint Committee on behalf of the Chief Exec, and I'll get that one to us as well. So I will just check with the clerk in the committee clerk in the Vale, get those 2 letters. We can omit the address, but they're the same information we're going to get from both. So we'll have those letters, I would hope, at next committee. If that satisfies committee, I see no reason right now. I actually don't see any reason writing the same letter when I'm going to get the same response. It's only this only the 3 authorities that have written are the 3 that I chair. And there are serious concerns at the moment with those 3 authorities around what it is now, the Joint Committee, the Cardiff Joint Committee, because again, then they haven't signed off yet, my understanding, the 23-24 accounts. They've been signed off by Audit Wales, they've been delivered, I understand, but they haven't gone to their requisite committee, and they've only just delivered their 24-25 accounts. So when they're going to come back, it's hoped, I think, by October, but we don't know yet.
Agenda item 8. I struggled here, like the recommendation was clarification was requested on why the responses on only 14 out of the 23 reviews and actions. It says the action plan has been reviewed by officers and early completion dates encouraged. Plan will be updated. But, I just wondered whether it actually answered the question there. So we wanted clarification on why there were responses on only 14 out of the 23 reviews with actions. But all we've got in response is the action plan has been reviewed. The plan will be updated accordingly. So presumably, let's hope, and can that be followed up, that at least it's addressed our point.
Yeah, my understanding, obviously, the annual governance statement will come with the annual statement of accounts when they're signed off by, when they've been signed off by Audit Wales. Rhys, do you know where we are on that, or Tracy?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Norma. Perhaps we can amend the response to the action. So I know one of the things that happened was the wording within the annual governance statement made that much clearer. So talked about the change of audit arrangements, because that was the conversation in the chamber about the audit arrangements have changed, and we'll be reporting on follow-ups differently in the future. So I know the wording was changed on the governance statement, and that's now with the Chief Exec and Leader for sign-off. So that's probably a more complete answer, if that's helpful.
Okay, thanks for that.
Well, I think we would see it anyway when the AGS comes to us with the accounts. So obviously we can satisfy ourselves, and that will be in October. Well, is it coming in October? Yeah. Sorry.
Yes, Chair. So I think just to be, because that isn't a very helpful response in the recommendations table, so I think when that comes as part of the cover report, if we can just be clear in the cover report, I'm looking at Tracy and Paul now, we could just, to remind us, if we can be clear in the cover report about what we've done around those things, so the committee is assured that they've been considered, yeah? Is that okay?
My final point, Chair. Agenda item 2, the second recommendation. I just thought, from when we raised this, that it's not going to be completed for 12 months. It's a bit excessive. I was expected to be completed, hopefully, in 3.
Which one are we looking at there now?
Consideration to be given on a mechanism whereby issues raised by councillors on behalf of their residents are recorded with the complement, comments and complaints process, and the committee also requested an improved mechanism for communication of compliments to the public to be developed. You don't need 12 months to do that. Sorry, it's the target date.
Yeah, thanks. So to be clear, the comms would happen now. So
right.
Hopefully the comment says that. So the comms have started, the you said, yeah. We did, comms will happen now. But obviously the wider work, which is about how councillor complaints are recorded, which is quite complex, is part of the customer contact piece. So the date relates to the second action, the first action.
So we've got we're about 6 months into a complete overhaul of the customer contact process, and there's specific work around members, engagements and interactions as part of that, and that is going to take a lot, because it is a kind of back to the drawing board review and reconfiguration of that, and what that's showing is, you know, what that's uncovering is a lot of systems and process issues as well across the organisation. So what we're trying to do is make it right rather than quick. So if it's quicker than that, normal, we'll report in. But it is a significant organisational piece of work.
I understand it, and I'm grateful for that explanation. But I think I'm one for setting tough targets, because I think if you get tough targets, people are going to, you know, they may not reach it, but at least it gives them to stretch to. I think when we give a long target, people will then tend to go over that.
I totally get that, but there's a work program. We've got 11 service areas across the organisation. We've got work scheduled up until February next year. That does not include that, and that's prior to get in. I'm looking at David because he's across it. That's prior to us getting to housing and communities and social services, because they've got different arrangements around customer engagement. And my anticipation is we'll get through round 1 of that, and then we will start in the second tranche of that to make sure that some of the changes are being embedded as well. So I get your point. We can keep committee updated on that. It's a very live topic of conversation with members as well, because, you know, if things fall, not, you know, we're us not always giving the best possible response to queries. So, but we can give an update on that. But that's why the timescales in Norma isn't elongating. That is specifically tied to that project.
Yeah, I think just picking up the point of Norma, as I've got this in one of the other committees I belong to, there's a long stop date. And I think what's missing on lotsification, there's a tremendous amount of work in between now and the long stop date. And what's missing is the target dates for those each. There's like an action plan underneath, isn't there? So the target dates for each of those key dates to pick off, to tick them off, to say, actually, by July 26, we will have done all these actions. And I think that's the point you made, Rhys, is whether or not just maybe a short covering report now and again to say, look, all these matters have been dealt with, we're on target to reach July 26. You know, this is the work that's been undertaken, because otherwise, as Norman, if it was a one-item matter and it was July 26, someone's going to say, well, why is it taking that long? But I think from the point you've just said, there's a tremendous amount of other stuff that's going on behind that to meet that target date. Okay. You happy with that, Norma? Okay. Someone please that we note the report and the comments made. Someone move. Thank you, Norma. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Ray. Anyone against? Nope. Thank you. Item 4 then on the agenda is the Food Standards Agency Recommendations Management Response, pages 15 to 38. Matthew.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'll give a brief background and then move on to the update and the management responses. So, the background: Newport City Council is responsible for official food controls at local food businesses. Environmental health officers ensure that businesses operate in a safe and hygienic environment. Trading standards officers ensure that food is accurately described and contains lawful ingredients. The Food Standards Agency, the FSA, they're our national regulator, and they set out the standards for local authorities to follow. And the FSA also have an audit function, and they came to Newport in January. That January visit was the 4th audit they had done in 10 years, and that was part of their routine programme of audits across Wales. The audit compared the service against their local authority code of practice and checked improvements identified at a pre-pandemic audit to make sure that we had progressed them. At the end of the audit, the FSA stated they were pleased with the service progress and provided us with a moderate score. So they can provide 4 scores. The second best score would be a moderate score. So we were quite pleased with that. It was noted that a number of our improvement actions were closed, but some were not closed. And those ones involved 4 broad headings: service planning, the full completion of enforcement documents, internal monitoring, and delivering inspections on time. So I'll just go through each of those ones to explain what we have done. In relation to service planning, the FSA was pleased with the detailed plans the teams were working to, but noted several items were not covered. These issues were examination of the trend of growth or reduction in our expenditure, noting the numbers of new unrated premises when we list how many businesses are in Newport, a limited review of last year and noting variances between what we actually delivered and what we had planned to deliver, and then in the plan an explanation on how we would deal with that in the current year. So they were the 4 things that were missing. The Cabinet member that we report to was briefed last week, and a draft service plan for both environmental health and trading standards have been prepared. The new service plan covers each of the emissions identified in the audit, and as soon as those plans are agreed by our Cabinet member, I propose to send those to the Chair and the Deputy Chair here, so you can just see that they have been done. In relation to the full completion of enforcement documents, the issues noted were just due to human error and were in fact minor matters. I can assure the committee that many enforcement documents were fully complete, but the FSA had a responsibility to note the ones that weren't complete. Our management action there are reminders and training and provision of guidance to officers. In relation to internal monitoring, the FSA noted that it was happening, but not in the correct format. There needed to be on record a record for the last 24 months. So our new process, following that audit, started in April. So by March 2027, the service will be able to demonstrate full compliance with that outstanding action, because we will have that 2-year data. And then finally, in relation to the issue of delivering all inspections on time, the FSA acknowledged the service didn't have the necessary staffing levels to guarantee that particular outcome, which is a very similar position to every council in the UK. It was pleased with a number of the initiatives that we had put in place where the service was mitigating that particular risk. The ones that I can tell the committee that were completed, temporary funding was identified during the year and then diverted into food inspections to try and increase the number of inspections that were done. One officer was diverted from fair trading and road trading work towards food inspections. So that really helped, putting 1 extra officer into the pot. But the opportunity cost there was the reduced work in those other areas. And then the final sort of point is that just as a matter of routine, our managers are always prioritising the inspections done based on the risk to the public. The tables in the appendices, so Appendix B, shows both for environmental health and trading standards how the higher risk businesses were all inspected during last year. And with the lower risk businesses, we inspected as many as we could with the resources that we had. So for environmental health, high risk premises are classed as A, B and C rated. And for trading standards, high risk premises are classed as A rated. And then you will see in the appendix that 100% of inspections were done in those higher risk areas. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you very much for the comprehensive report, and also all the appendices. That was, I think that added greatly to the report, because it shows actually the tremendous amount of work that your teams are doing out there in regards to, you know, the inspections and such like, and I think that adds a lot more value to it. Any questions, anyone? Norma?
Did you mention that the service plan would be ready in November? But the service plan for 25-26 hasn't been completed yet, is it?
No, it hasn't, no. Because we were audited by the Food Standards Agency, their action plan came out later than we needed in order to get the plan ready, and our cabinet member has been recently appointed, so we were in a hiatus waiting for the new cabinet member and to know who to report it to. Thank you.
Sorry, Rhys, did you want?
Yeah, can I just to put a wrapper around that. So obviously that there's some finer detail associated with that, which is impact. But we moved in this corporate plan cycle to essentially a 5-year rolling service plans. So the service plans, they're not completely rewritten every year. They're updated. So there's still an operational plan in place. But I think what Matthew is saying is because of the Food Standards Agency inspection, there are a series of things that need to be taken into consideration that to actually put those things in place for this year.
Yeah, thank you. A couple of other comments, if I may. I served on the Food Standards Agency Welsh Advisory Committee, so I'm well aware of the challenges you face, particularly in terms of staffing, and that, as you say, rightly said, Matthew, throughout Wales, isn't it? Not just common. And I understand the particular issues you've got in Newport as well. Have we any idea when the FSA is due to visit again?
The usual process is we're on a 3-year cycle. So they do, every year they do a third of the local authorities. So my expectation is that it would be in 2028. However, we are in quite a lot of contact with them. They're colleagues of ours, effectively. So they could call in our action plans, and perhaps we could, because we'll be proud that we have completed all the actions. So when we get to that point, which is really soon, we will proactively get in touch with them, because what we would like to see is those action plans turn to green. That's our plan. Thank you.
Okay, that sounds good. Just one more, if I may.
Norma, can you go a little bit closer to the mic, or drag the mic a bit closer to you?
Like you, Chair, I thought having the appendices was really helpful, and I particularly liked the fact that the prioritisation was taking place in Appendix B. I thought that was really good. But then the figures at the end of on page 35, on the end of Appendix A, that I couldn't understand, because you've got recommendations 11, then it's 8 for environmental health, 5 for trading standards, and that adds up to 13 for me, and then the next one is 5, and if you total it's 6. I don't know why there are blank columns there. And total outstanding, there is 7, but there's 6 as the total. Are they just incorrect? Are they just errors?
That is an excellent spot. This is the Food Standards Agency's document.
Oh,
so I have copied it and put it into the report, so I can take that back to them.
You take that back to them.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Are there any other questions? No. Thank you for saying when the FSA will be in again. Just an indication as to sort of when do you consider, obviously there is still a amber on your charts. When do you expect those to be signed off? As you've got ambers and greens and quite a few blues now. When do you believe that those will all be signed off to be blue?
My feeling will be the ones relating to the service plan, that will be signed off very soon. The ones relating to the enforcement reporting, that one can be signed off really soon, you know, the enforcement notices. With the internal monitoring, that will be when we've got the 2-year sort of history of the internal monitoring. And then the final problem, which we might, nobody ever goes to green, you know, sort of completed with the timing of the inspections because of the resources issue across the UK. So that one might mean, you know, it's very difficult for us to move above moderate because of that. Thank you.
The only reason I ask is when are we going to call you back in? Because obviously 2027 is when hopefully you'll have the 2 years worth of data. But the service plan, which you said is going to be signed off this month, hopefully, or will be signed off presumably by Cabinet or Council in due course. And the other issue, which I think you said will be signed, is that going to be sort of within 3 months, do you think? And if it is within 3 months, what I was suggesting to the committee is that we ask you to come back in 3 months, sign those 2 off. We then wait until 2027 when you'll have all the data. And I think we have to accept the other issue about capacity, because, you know, I, like Nora, fully aware of capacity issues in environmental health and trading standards. So is sort of 3 months for the 2 sort of outstanding ones reasonable?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? No? Any comments from anyone? No, can I just say thank you for the report. Obviously, provides a substantial amount of information for members. I think, you know, clearly you and the team, both trade standards and environmental health, have been working extremely hard in regards to addressing the Food Standard Agency's recommendations. So if you could pass our thanks back from this committee to say well done to date. You're not off the hook yet. But, you know, thank you for the tremendous amount of work you've done. And obviously, let it continue. You know, let's hope we don't have something else happen like COVID or COVID-2 or whatever it is. But thank you very much for that. So the recommendation, I think, is we note the contents of the report and the progress made to date. And we ask you to come back in with an update in regards to the action plan, which you set out, those relating to ambers in reality, for the... Have we got a committee in January? To the January committee? Is that okay? Good. Okay, someone prepared to move, please. Thank you, Norma. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Ray. Anyone against? No, thank you very much. You can leave if you wish. You're quite happy to stay if you want to. But anyway, thank you both for coming. Thank you for your time. Okay, item 5 then on the agenda is Audit Wales Temporary Accommodation Report Management Response. David.
There we go. Thank you, Taylor. So, thanks everybody. I'll just set out some wider context around the report, talk a little bit about some of the pressures in Newport, and then highlight our management actions. So, this was a report that Audit Wales conducted across Wales. So, they've looked at every local authority, and they included interviews with us, and based upon that, they were able to produce a range of findings related to both the kind of the value for money of temporary accommodation, how councils are assessing that, work to limit demand for temporary accommodation through preventative work, and then the plans to kind of manage demand in the future and work in a partnership-based way. It's probably also just worth saying before I talk about the Newport context that we have shared our management response with Audit Wales, and they've accepted those. So, just a bit of a Newport context, just for the committee. So, I think it's fair to say that, like many other councils across Wales and across the UK, since the pandemic, we have experienced a real kind of acuity of demand for homelessness assistance. You know, Newport has been, in the last couple of years, had one of the highest prevalences of homelessness in Wales. Now, alongside that, the way that that temporary accommodation is funded through the housing benefit regulations essentially means that local authorities can never recoup the full cost of providing that temporary accommodation because the amount we can recover is capped. Now, the shortfall that we experience obviously depends upon the type of accommodation we're providing. So nightly purchased accommodation will often have will generally have a greater shortfall than, say, accommodation leased from a private landlord. What I have included in the table is in the report is a table that shows the housing benefit subsidy deficit. So that's that shortfall, and you'll see it's substantial and it's increased. And I've set that against the request of the Chair, the kind of funding that we've received from Welsh Government in terms of homelessness costs. So just a little bit more in the Newport context, and then we'll talk about TA in Newport. So our profile of demand for homelessness assistance for temporary accommodation has changed. About 80% of the people in temporary accommodation now are single-person households or childless couples, and in terms of those groups approaching us, around 73% have either been in hospital, another institution, staying with family or friends, and that kind of insecure situation that makes it more challenging to prevent homelessness. You know, I think it's also just worth touching on the causes of homelessness. Homelessness is caused by a really kind of complex intersection of factors. So issues within people's lives, for example, mental health issues, histories of complex trauma, but also the wider environment in which we're working, welfare benefit legislation, housing policy, planning policy, and the socio-economic environment. And responses to tackle homelessness and reduce demand are equally complex, requiring, you know, kind of work across the public sector, as well as work to increase the supply of housing, particularly social housing. And I think it's also important just to note that within the report, we point out some of the kind of other, you know, key policy drivers that have been highlighted by crisis to impact upon homelessness demand. Within a Newport context, I think there are specific challenges. For example, we've had really significant rises in private rents over the last year, whilst local housing allowance rates that people receive from the housing benefit to pay for private rents have remained frozen for a very long period since the pandemic with one uplift. In terms of what we're doing about it, so housing is a transformation area for the council. We've got a transformation plan to try and improve outcomes for clients and to reduce homelessness in the city, and to deliver really key objectives such as moving to a rapid rehousing approach in line with kind of Welsh Government's Ending Homelessness Action Plan. We have had some notable successes. We have significantly reduced the number of families with dependent children living in temporary accommodation. So at the end of the financial year, we'd reduced that number by about 40% over the course of the past financial year. And we have also reduced the number of people sleeping rough in the city. The challenge we've got there is that demand for homelessness assistance has continued to rise. So whilst we've reduced some forms of demand for temporary accommodation, that demand from single households and childless couples has continued to rise. We've also recently conducted a service review, really to kind of refresh our transformation work and look at what else we can be doing. So if I now move on to the Audit Wales recommendations. The first recommendation was around how councils are assessing that they're securing value for money in temporary accommodation provision. And we've identified a range of planned actions from that, which we intend to complete by March 2026. So the first is that we will adapt our viability assessments to look at all forms of temporary accommodation, rather than always just looking at the most expensive when we're assessing the value for money there. We're also going to undertake a strategic review of our utilisation of temporary accommodation, just to ensure that our support is always strategically wrapped around each different type of temporary accommodation that we have to meet the needs of clients and also to ensure value for money. And we're also in the process of looking at how we're using our data. We've done a lot of work to kind of forecast where we think demand's going to go. That's really difficult because of the multifaceted nature of homelessness, and to really improve our understanding of data. The next step is to develop a really kind of simple dashboard that will pull together the different strands of reporting that we have, including financial information. And we've just recently this week completed an upgrade of our housing system that will allow us to do that. In terms of the planning for prevention recommendation, based on the service review work that I've mentioned, we're in the process of using data to be able to revise our predictions for future temporary accommodation demand more effectively and on a quarterly basis. We will establish external and internal working groups to prepare for the implementation of the new Homelessness and Allocations Bill. And we're also going through a process of just reviewing our housing-related support service and mapping those services, as suggested by Welsh Government, against primary, secondary and tertiary prevention services. Lastly, we will be, as we undertake our normal kind of workforce development plans, really thinking about the potential impact of the Homelessness and Allocations Bill. And finally, the recommendation around partnership working. We're currently in the process of refreshing our Strategic Housing Forum terms of governance, and I think there's an opportunity to really align that to our Housing Support Programme and Rapid Rehousing Transition Plan more effectively. I apologise, they're provided as abbreviations within the report, and I'll get that amended. And we will also continue to work with senior leaders within the council and partner organisations, health, for example, probation, to ensure that we're integrating services wherever possible and ensuring that, particularly for those people with complex needs, we're able to provide a really comprehensive, joined up service. And those are discussions that we've been having for many years, but we'll keep doing that and really try and focus on some of those over the next 6 months or so. So that's just an overview. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, David, for a comprehensive report. Obviously, there's still a lot of work to be done, but the report certainly highlights the issues that Newport has, and it's not going away. So on that basis, are there any questions? No questions? Any comments? Oh, Jason?
Oh, there we are. Sorry, Chair. I'm not quite sure if this would be a relevant question to ask at this time. I'm not quite sure. They're saying with the long-term crisis over the period, how long are they looking at the long-term crisis, and what sort of percentage of people we actually got on their temporary accommodation list at all? Would that be a question to ask now, or would that go to officers itself?
It's a question for another place. It's not a question for here, obviously. But I'm sure that if you take it offline, David will give you that information, which he knows the question now, so he can give you a call tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll happily have a chat with you about that, Councillor Jordan.
Yeah, okay, no problem, thanks.
Councillor Harvey.
Thanks, Chair. David, I know we've got a lot of people stuck in temporary housing, and that's nobody's fault. It's just the situation we're in. Are we at risk of running out of money to assist the people in temp accommodation and those who are actually homeless? And have we got like a safety net in place to make sure that that's going to be mitigated, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I think, Councillor Harvey, again, that's a question for a different place. can David get back to you offline?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I think you hit a very big nail on the head. If you look at the table that David set out, which is on the top of page 40, which gives the housing benefit subsidy deficit, you'll see for this this financial year, it was whatever it is, 5 million. Last financial year, it was 5 million, nearly £6 million. And you've got a grant, I assume, from Welsh Government of 1.2. So the question there is the council's finding 4.8 million, I expect, to backfill that. And, you know, if that continues, then, you know, other services are going to have to be cut in the authority. And again, it's a point well made that Welsh Government should actually take cognizance of that, you know, in Newport, that's ever rising, and it's a huge cost on the council taxpayer in reality in Newport. But I'm sure David can come back to you on that point.
It feels like we're trying to put a stick in plaster on an open wound at the moment, and I just want to acknowledge the hard work the staff are putting in to try and hold the tide back, that's all. Yeah, no,
I'm with you there, but I think it's a great shame that Welsh Government aren't told this directly. And with a new piece of legislation coming in, I think that has a greater impact as well. So, you know, without any money, you know, as is normal with Welsh Government, dare I say it, they bring in pieces of new legislation without any funding whatsoever. Yeah. And lo and behold, the people at the end of the sausage machine, which is normally local government, have to pick up that tab. And that cannot be right and proper. But there we are, I'll leave that there. Rhys, do you want to say something?
If there are no more questions, I just wanted, you know, I just want to, I suppose, really just wrap in what David just said. You know, there is a massive strain across the city. The population growth, you know, we had the 9.6% population growth over the last census data. It's growing at about 1.5% a year at the moment. So that growth is accelerated. It's not levelling off, which is having impacts right across the housing market. You know, David, I would say, has got a very comprehensive and well thought out programme of activity over the next couple of years, and actually to try to put us in a position where this is more financially sustainable. I think that's really to be commended. And also just to say, and for the committee, you know, what we're looking at here are some recommendations from Audit Wales and some approaches and activity and some finances associated with that. But the day-to-day, those teams are working with some of the most needy within our communities, you know, multiple issues. Staff have to put up with quite a lot of, I would say abuse is probably the right word, within that environment from people in crisis, and, you know, just doing a commendable job, really.
Thank you for that, Rhys, for that background. Jason.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just come back on what I think what Rita said is actually, you know, as the population's growing out 1.5% every year. Do you mean, you know, that's going to put a massive strain on the local authority as well, to try to find houses or temporary accommodation for these people. So, you know, if nothing's really done pretty sharply, so, well, if it can be, you know, the problem's going to get worse and worse and worse, isn't it, really?
Yeah, thank you for that. Are there any other comments? No? Clearly, David, the position is, obviously, thank you to Audit Wales for signing off the management response so quickly. There's, as Rhys has said, a tremendous amount of work that needs to be undertaken to address the recommendations. But the recommendations, isn't it all? There's lots of other bits you're doing, I'm sure, too, as Rhys has said, to deliver a service for those most vulnerable in the city, those with, you know, significant needs. Whatever aggression your staff receive, they deserve a medal in some respects. But one thing I know, I see where Beth and want to come in. One thing I would say, and the recommendation which I will put to committee, is that we note the management response provided to Audit Wales, and we give you until May next year to report back, because again, there's significant, and I don't want this interfering in all that work, hard work by you coming back and forwards, because clearly in May you should have addressed it all. But I'm sure that if you don't, you will come back and say, look, there's a bit of slippage. But let's just wait to see what Bethan says in a minute. Bethan!
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much. No, that's all been really comprehensive and really helpful, I think. I just wanted to come in with one further point for context. We also undertook a national studies audit at the end of last year on affordable housing, which was directed more in the national space towards Welsh Government. So you probably will have picked it up in our quarterly updates which used to come to committee, but I forwarded it on to Taylor as well for information for the committee, so that you've got the national picture of the review that we undertook, which included sort of those national strategies, to read alongside the local government studies one, which is the one that's in front of you around temporary accommodation. So just for information, I've asked for it to be shared with the committee.
Yeah, thank you for that, Bethan. It would be interesting to understand whether Welsh Government ministers actually read the Auditor General's report on these issues, because I think they'd have a heart attack, actually, if they understand how much it actually costs the public sector in real terms, not only in regards to this, but all other matters. And when you tie this in, again, with one of your reports about commissioning, in regards to value for money, councils are being overawed by lots of this stuff, but there we are, needs must. So, recommendation to committee that we note the contents of the report and the management response to Audit Wales, and we request that David, or the Head of Housing and Communities, come back to committee in May 2026 to provide us with a full and comprehensive update as to the actions taken. Thank you. Someone prepared to move, please. Thank you, Ray. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Norma. Anyone against? No. Thank you very much.
Thank
David,
you, Chair.
if you want to go, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Item 6 then, the Corporate Risk Register. Tracy?
Thank you, Chairs. This starts on page 45. So this is the Corporate Risk Register for Q1. And also follows a period of service plan review. So we've talked about that previously, how the risks are kept live through the service planning process. As you can see, there's 7 severe risks, 6 major risks, and 2 risks were de-escalated from the risk register during that period. Paul, do you want to talk us through the detail?
Yeah, so just to go through the detail for the committee. The first risk that was de-escalated was the delivery of the new social care system, which was formally recognised as the WCCIS replacement. So just to reassure the committee, this particular risk will still be monitored through the Directorate and the service area, and there are mechanisms that have been put in place in terms of the actual delivery of the project, which will be reported and monitored all the way up to the Executive Board led by the Chief Executive. In relation to the second risk that was de-escalated around the stability of social services providers, our adult services have done a lot of work in order to ensure that the market is stabilised and new entrants have come in. So they felt as if it could be de-escalated, and the Executive Board have agreed for it to be de-escalated. Again, this risk will continue to be monitored within the Directorate and the service area ongoing, and as with all risks, if it needs to come back onto the Corporate Risk Register, it will do so. And at that point, I will hand over to the committee if they've got any questions or comments to make.
Yeah, thank you, Paul, for that. Any questions? No questions? Any comments? No comments? Okay. If we go to the recommendation then, the recommendations, I think, is that we note the contents of the report and the assessment of the risk management arrangements for the authority. Someone prepared to move, please? Thank you, Ray. Thank you, Norma. Anyone against? Oh, anyone against? No, thank you. Item 7 then, the annual corporate plan self-assessment report 24-25, pages 87 to 142. Rees.
Hi, thanks, Chair. I'm going to give a very, very brief introduction before I hand over to Tracy and Paul with any of the details. So I think a committee are used to this report. We've had this for a few years now, so it's an annual report. Annual self-assessment is required for us to undertake as part of the Local Government Elections Act. Committee, we're going to be asked to make comment on that. We have to take those comments into consideration. If we do not adjust the report based on those comments, we have to provide a written response back to the Governance and Audit Committee on that, or Cabinet does on that. So this will come from here to Cabinet and then full Council over the next 2 months. So I'll hand over to Tracy and Paul, who can go through some of the detail, and then Committee for questions.
Thank you. So I'll just provide the Committee with some of the detail around this year's self-assessment. So, for the Committee's attention, this report was also presented to the Overview Scrutiny Management Committee a couple of weeks ago. Their comments and feedback have been included into the cover report and the update provided in relation to their feedback provided. That has been added into this report, by the way, for the Committee's attention. As usual, as per every other year, this has been undertaken as part of a very comprehensive review undertaken by a corporate management team, all the heads of service. We've taken on board all of the key annual reports and the end-of-year reports that have been provided to the performance scrutiny committees. So this is kind of a roundup in terms of what has happened in the last financial year in terms of the delivery against the corporate plan, as well as the delivery and the challenges that the organisation has faced. In addition to that, in Appendix 2 and 3 of the report, you will see the key performance measures that have been reported and support the corporate plan. And then also, in addition to that, are the requirements which is required by the Act for us to include. So there's a very comprehensive review of the annual governance statement, which this committee has received, as well as an overview in terms of the activity of the internal audit team and the regulatory team provided by Audit Wales, Care Inspectorate Wales, and also Estyn. So I think at this point we'll hand over to the committee for any comments and feedback from them.
Yeah, thank you for that, Paul. Obviously, I hope that most of the members have read through the report and have picked up any issues they wish to. So, any questions? Norma?
I feel like deja vu, Chair. Every year I raise the same issue. I really enjoy reading this self-assessment. I think it gives me a really good picture of what's going on in Newport and what is achieved. But I always feel that we're not self-reflecting enough and we're not looking enough in terms of how we can improve. And I've done a comparison with other self-assessments as well, which, you know, reinforces my concern. You know, if you look at the Welsh Government guidance, it says that, you know, we should be identifying actions for improvements. We've identified 3 actions for improvements, and I would have thought for every wellbeing objective there is some way we should improve. And if I compare it with one I have reviewed recently, one other one I've reviewed recently, for every wellbeing objective there was between 3 and 10 actions for improvement. And when I read the narrative of that report, it gives me a feeling of real authenticity in that it states what's been achieved, it states what hasn't been achieved as well, because I think it's important to say, okay, we achieved this, but, you know, we failed on this, or this wasn't so good. So you feel it's an authentic report. And it's, you know, it comes up for every wellbeing objective, a list of how they should improve. And, you know, I've mentioned this every meeting, I think, when this item comes up. And we're in the same situation every year. You know, if there's a reason for not taking on board my suggestion, I'd welcome the feedback. But, you know, the Welsh Government guidance is very specific. It says we should state what and how we could do better. So, you know, my question was, should there be more actions for improvement, particularly when you look at the red and amber ratings? If you've got red and amber ratings, you know you need to improve in the area. Turning now into more specific issues, when I was looking at the challenges and the achievements, I was thinking, well, is it this year's last year's challenges, or is it this year's challenges? Because if you look at a challenge, you want to make sure that the achievement matches the challenge. First of all, the challenge becomes before the achievement. So I would like to see the challenge first, the achievement second. And then I thought to myself, well, if we've achieved that, does that actually address the challenge? And in a number of them, it didn't answer the question for me. The narrative under each wellbeing objective reads very well, and as I've always said, I've always enjoyed reading them. I would suggest that we need to review that under Strategic Priorities 6. I think that could be improved a little bit. And there's some blank boxes which I didn't understand what they were about. I think that's a summary of my feedback, really, on the document. And I'm just a bit disappointed that comments I've made previously don't seem to be taken on board.
Thank you, Norma, for that. Does someone want to comment or go away and think about it? Because obviously the issue is, as you said, Rhys, we need to do a recommendation to Cabinet, if we are going to make a recommendation to Cabinet, and then for Cabinet to consider it and then provide a response back.
So we've had feedback from Law. If that's going to be a committee recommendation, we'll consider it. Yeah. I take your point. I've listened to what you've said. I take your point, and I think some of the empty boxes, I think that's just a formatting matter. But yeah, so if committee's recommendation is there needs to be more actions associated with improvements, then we can pull those out. Yeah.
I think it's not so much more actions, absolutely, absolutely. But when you read it, it's great to read. I get a joy reading it, but actually it doesn't feel real, because we know we all have problems in organisations and they don't come through. And I think it'd be useful to look at perhaps some other authorities. I mean, I've only looked at one, and which I think feels really authentic for me. In some ways, yours is better in terms of presentation. There's good and bad in everyone, but just it's about the authenticity, that we are self-reflecting and we're actually seeing where we could do better. It feels that we're doing well. We've only got 3 actions, and most of those aren't particularly substantive, and that can't be the reality. When I looked at this other one, for every wellbeing objective, there has been between 3 and 10 actions.
Obviously, each one's got to be taken on its own individual merits. Each council's different.
Yeah,
I take on
absolutely.
board what you say completely.
Norma.
And I think you do as well, Rhys.
I absolutely do. As I said, listen, if you'd be interested to know which local authority that is, so we can have a look at it.
Yeah, I can send you a copy of it.
We don't need to. If you just tell it, you can just.
Yeah, it's Pembrokeshire.
Pembrokeshire.
And I'm reviewing that, because we're reviewing that on Tuesday. I actually sent you a copy of Pembrokeshire about 2 years ago.
Yeah. Okay, right, well, Rhys, you can have a look at that anyway, or the team can have a look at it anyway, can't you?
And they're doing it differently as they previously done it. That's evolving, but it does feel authentic. And, the papers are published for next Tuesday's meetings, and it's amongst the papers.
It's fine. Now we know which local authority it is. We can have a look at that.
Ray?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to pick up what Norma said about, this has been raised before several times, apparently, and presumably it's gone to Cabinet before. Has it made progress to Cabinet, or has it been stalled?
I don't think it's ever got to Cabinet, because I did question that, I think, at one point.
As I said, when I start off with, so while I would look back at last year's, what will be taken to Cabinet are recommendations of the committee, not comments from individual members.
Yeah.
So when you agree what your recommendations are at the end of it, that's the thing we will consider.
Yeah. Any other questions? Any comments? Tracy.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to reinforce one of the points which I think is helpful, which is that we have reviewed the corporate plan during this period. So there are kind of real amends to the corporate plan, which perhaps makes that look a bit light in this report, because those things are in the corporate plan. I think we can do better at pulling those through also, which isn't something we had last year because we're mid-term on the corporate plan now. So I think we can really strengthen that narrative also.
Yeah, I think maybe I look at it too simply. I think, you know, most plans say, look, this is what we said we do, this is what we did, and this is what we didn't do. In reality, when it comes to planning, and it's been open and honest about that. I think what Norm is, I think, trying to illustrate is that reinforcement of what you didn't do, and is it an area for improvement, and then how are you going to address it next year, you know, because again, that's key. And again, in your charts, as you say, you've got the key achievements and the key challenges. So, you know, I think it just needs to be looked at in greater detail to say, right, okay, the areas for improvement in these areas are A, B and C, or A, B, C, D, E, F, G, or whatever it may be. And if that could be looked at, we'll put a recommendation in now. And if that could be looked at, and then obviously Cabinet can respond back, or you amend the document and hopefully it makes it a bit more robust.
That's absolutely fine. And just, I agree with your assessment. All right, so it's difficult when you're in it and you're looking at it all the time. It's quite challenging because you know where the issues are. And there's a difference between this is our self-assessment, saying what the issues are for the city that we're operating within and we're supporting and we're working, and you know, the communities we're working for, and actually the assessment of how we're delivering services and what we're doing. So I think we just need to disentangle that. And when it went to Overview and Scrutiny Management Committee, whilst they came up with some specific things about the reds within and some more explanation, actually, if you unpick that conversation, it was more around, well, what are the things that are not going so well within it as well. So I think that's reflected in both those. So if that's a recommendation, we can, we'll put some, I'm going to look at Paul and Tracy, we'll put some time in to go through it, because we could probably do that reasonably quickly, yeah?
And I think, you know, the point Norma makes, it goes down to the fact is how well do you know yourself, isn't it, really? And it's that openness to say, and don't see it as a weakness, you know, we see it as an area for improvement. We'll hold our hands up because, you know, we've just done a report on temporary accommodation. You don't always get it right. Well, mind you, neither does Welsh Government and that, but, you know, we don't always get it right, and I think it's that owning up of it to say, look, we know where we're going, we know what we've done wrong or we didn't achieve, and this is how we're going to go forward. Okay, so if there's no other comments, then I think the recommendation is really that we note the contents of the annual corporate assessment and corporate wellbeing and self-assessment report 24-25, and we request that Cabinet reviews the actions for improvement. Is that really what we're looking for in regards to the Council's determination in regards to what is achieved, what it's not achieved, and how is it going to put it back in place, or whatever? Can we get a recommendation out of that? Yeah. Is that okay, Rhys? Okay. Norm, are you happy with that? Thank you. Someone prepared to move, please. Thank you, Ray. Can I have a second there? Thank you, Norma. Anyone against? No. Thank you. Item 8 is the Governance and Audit Committee Annual Report, pages 143 to 164.
Thank you, Chair. I don't propose to go through the paper in great detail. This annual report, the committee's considered for the last couple of years, so this is the next iteration of it. Ultimately, the report will be shared with full council. The report sets out how the committee has met its duties under the terms of reference in the council's constitution, and also in relevance to the legislation, the Local Government Act and Local Government and Elections Act. Sorry, Local Government Measure. The report sets out the table of work that the committee has considered over the preceding 12 months, and also focuses on the outcomes and impacts that the committee has had during that time. I think we've made note of feedback from the committee last year where we've continued to include the biographies of the lay members and also focused on the call-ins that have been considered during the year. So the report is presented to the committee today for your feedback in terms of the content prior to a final version being collated.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Any questions? Comments? Norma?
Just one comment, really, Chair. I think it reads fine, but I'm reading it. It was very unspecific. There were only one or two places where we were specific in terms of what we had done, what we'd recommended, what we'd influenced. And I was just thinking for the reader, you know, I would say, what would the man in the street make of this? It just, some of it read just like words, without meaning. And, you know, it's about trying to convey to anyone who reads it, not that anybody would read it probably, but to anyone that reads it, that this committee has been active and, you know, has raised issues about this, has called this in, etc. I just felt, you know, it was just a bit unspecific.
I
don't know whether that's a fair comment.
Try to summarise the work of the committee, but I can certainly look to perhaps lift maybe some of the recommendations from the reports themselves last year.
Yeah, I think it's about giving more of a feel of us being active and robust, because it feels like we just did this. It feels as if we've just gone through the motions when you read it.
Again, it's down to narrative, isn't it, ultimately? And again, as you quite rightly say, you know, it's very important that we have the call-ins and, you know, what has changed as a result of calling directorates in, etc. You know, clearly it's, you know, a lot about the work we do with Audit Wales in regards to tracking their recommendations as well as lots of others. And I think maybe just a bit enhancing that a bit more. Would that suffice, Norma? You know, because again, ultimately this is a learning exercise. You know, we're going from dead stop, aren't we, sort of a couple of years ago where we didn't have any, so we're moving on, and I think, you know, it's embryonic, isn't it, and organic, really, in regards to how we deliver this. So, and I've got to say, I have been invited to council in January, so I may have most probably come in online because I'm not going to fly back to the committee, but I'm happy, Rhys, for you to do it, or I'll be there supporting from the sideline.
Sure, we can talk about that before that point, Chair.
Thank you for that. Okay. Any other comments? No. We see the recommendation then that we note the content of the attached Governance and Audit Committee Annual Report 24-25 for presentation to full Council, subject to some minor narrative tweaks. Someone prepared to move, please? Thank you, Ray. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Norma. Anyone against? No. Thank you. Item 9, the work programme, 165 to 172. The work programme's there for everyone to see. Clearly, we've just asked, and it's already in there, Taylor. You must have been, you know, psychic, really, putting the temporary accommodation in for May 26. Anything else we need to pick up?
It's just a note that in the next committee in October, there'll be the final statement of accounts, the audit of financial statements report, and then a report from the annual compliments, comments and complaints report. Was scheduled for this committee but got moved to the next one. And like you said, there's the Food Standard Agency report will come back in January, with the temporary accommodation housing coming back in May.
Okay.
Those have been the main updates.
Yeah, thank you. And with the compliments, comments and complaints, will that have the Ombudsman for Wales letter in it as well? Oh. Sorry.
Yeah, we were ready to go with it, Chair. We had the report and the letter, but the Ombudsman has asked us to hold while they check some of their data.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah, so if we receive that letter, we won't go with the report without the letter. It's incomplete. We've already told you everything else, so but we're very hopeful that'll be next time. We're ready to go.
Yeah, that's okay. I had that in another authority where we did the report and then the Ombudsman's letter hadn't come out yet, so we've had to have a look at it again. So but it's out now, but has it been withheld, is it?
Yeah, they've asked us to, they've issued it and asked us to hold because they got some concerns about their data.
Oh, okay. Well, we've had it in one committee, so maybe I need to look at it again. There we are. Okay, sorry. Rhys, did you want to say? No? Okay, so recommendation there is that we endorse the proposed schedule for future meetings. Someone prepared to move, please. Thank you, Norma. Seconded. Thank you, Ray. Anyone against? No. Date of next meeting is the 23rd of October. And we'll deal with what Taylor just said, the statement of accounts, etc. And on that note, I now thank everyone for attending the meeting. Thank you all online for your support. Oh, I've got a hand up from Myrian.
Yeah, Chair, as I think we've already told you, I don't think we will have the statements of accounts ready for the end of October. So that's, we've suggested to you that is done in the regular November meeting.
Okay.
If there is no other agenda item for October, I think that was a special meeting just for the accounts. If that is the case, then that meeting would not be needed.
Okay, the other thing is, if you're ready, we could presumably have a special meeting just to deal with the accounts, the annual governance statement, and whatever letter comes from Audit Wales. I forget what number it is or mnemonic it is, but we could do that. Any idea when the accounts are going to be signed off?
Well, we've suggested to you, haven't we, that we deal with these in the regular scheduled governance and audit meeting in November.
Yeah. Okay. Well, as long as November's not too late, because I assume it's then going to go to council, is it? Which is
no. The accounts come to governance and audits,
and that's it.
And that's it. Yeah.
Okay.
So
all right.
We've done that, yeah.
Okay, we'll be guided by you. So thank you for that. As I was saying, thank you very much for everyone on screen and the officers online. Thank you everyone in the chamber, and the meeting is now closed.